You saved $20,000. 3 years of discipline. 3 years of saying no to expensive dinners, no to vacations, no to new car. Then 6 months later, you back to $3,000, wondering what the hell happened to your life. Caveman sees this everywhere. Picture this. Someone you know just hit 20,000 saved. Took them 3 years. Within 6 months, they back to 3,000 wondering what happened. Or maybe that person is you. The hard part was not saving the 20,000. That just discipline and time. Hard part is the 48 hours after you hit that number when your brain starts whispering that you deserve something nice, that you earned an upgrade, that this is finally your moment to stop living like broke college student. And that whisper is what separates people who retire with $2 million from people who work until they 70 years old. Caveman tells you truth today about most dangerous moment in your financial life. The moment right after you saved something meaningful. Because nobody tells you this, but there are only 2 things that happen when you hit 20,000 saved. Either you turn it into 350,000 over next 30 years, or you incinerate it trying to look successful. And difference comes down to what you do in next 2 weeks. Hear what nobody tells you about this moment. Your brain wants certainty. Market gives you volatility. Your brain wants immediate gratification. Wealth building requires decades of patience. This is why most people fail at this stage, not because they're not smart enough, but because they're fighting their own psychology. And psychology always wins unless you understand the game. So Caveman talks about what actually works. Starting with most important question, do you have high interest debt? Caveman talking about credit cards, personal loans, anything charging you more than 6 or 7%. If you have $10,000 sitting on credit card at 22% interest, you are not investing that money, you paying off the debt first. Let Caveman show you why. If you have $10,000 on credit card at 22% and you only make minimum payments, it will take you over 25 years to pay it off, and you will pay roughly $14,000 in interest alone. That right? You pay the bank more in interest than you originally borrowed. Meanwhile, if you invested that $10,000 in stock market earning hopeful 10%, you fighting losing battle. You are paying guaranteed 22% to earn potential 10%. Mathematically, you are volunteering to lose money every single day you keep that debt alive. The rule is, anything above 6 to 7% interest gets paid off before you invest. Credit cards at 22%, gone. Personal loans at 15%, obliterated. Federal student loans at 6.4%, that borderline, but Caveman leaned toward paying it off because guaranteed returns always beat potential returns. And that interest compounds against you every single month. It like negative compound interest working in reverse, making you poor while you sleep. Caveman knows someone who had 18,000 saved and 12,000 in credit card debt at 21% interest. He convinced himself that investing more important because building wealth early is everything. So he put 10,000 into index funds and kept making minimum payments on the cards. 3 years later, market had gone up 30%. His 10,000 was now worth 13,000. Sounds great, right? Except he paid 8,000 in credit card interest during those 3 years. His 3,000 gain cost him 8,000 to achieve. He was 5,000 poorer than if he just paid off the debt first. And when Caveman explained this to him, he looked like Caveman just told him Santa was not real, because nobody had ever made him do the actual math. So you eliminated the high interest debt. You're not bleeding money anymore. Now you might be thinking you should invest everything else immediately. Wrong. Because there is step most people skip that ends up destroying them later, the emergency fund. If you single, renting with stable job and no dependents, you need 3 months of essential expenses. If you got mortgage, kids, or freelance income, you need 6 months minimum. For most people, that's $7,500 to $24,000. This is part where people get nervous because it feels like you not doing anything exciting with most of the money. But emergency fund is not investment, it's insurance, and it keeps you from going into debt when your transmission dies or you lose your job. Let Caveman tell you what happens when you do not have emergency fund. Your car needs $1,200 in repairs. You do not have $1,200 sitting around because it all invested. So you have 3 choices. Sell investments and eat the taxes and potential losses, put it on credit card at 22% interest, or just not fix the car and hope it does not get worse. All three options are terrible. And now you making financial decisions based on panic instead of planning. This is why emergency fund comes first, even though it feels like dead money earning nothing. It not earning nothing, it earning peace of mind, which is only thing that lets you stay invested when market drops 30%. Where should this emergency fund live? High yield savings, account earning 3.5 to 4.5%. Not regular checking account earning nothing, not the stock market. Just boring FDIC insured high-yield savings account. Pi Bank is paying 4.6%. Marcus and Ali are around 3.3 to 3.65%. Okay, so you paid off high-interest debt. You got your emergency fund set, and now you got between $5,000 and $10,000 left. This is where actual wealth building starts. Priority number 1, max out Roth IRA for 2026. The contribution limit is likely $7,000 to $7,500. Check IRS website for exact inflation adjustment. If you under 50 and make less than income limit, you can contribute full amount. This is single best financial move you can make. Hear why. Everything that grows inside Roth IRA is tax-free forever. Not tax-deferred, tax-free. If you 25 and you put $7,500 into Roth IRA today and it grows at 10% per year, by age 65, that $7,500 will be worth about $339,000. You will not pay taxes on that $331,500 in gains. If that money was in taxable account, you would owe $50,000 to $65,000 in capital gains taxes. You locking in today's tax rate on the seed and getting tomorrow's tree completely tax-free. Okay, you opened the Roth IRA and funded it with $7,500. You staring at your account balance. Now what? This is where people panic and start researching stocks or asking Reddit which company's about to explode. Stop. Close Reddit. You about to do something so boring and so effective that it feels like cheating. Inside that Roth IRA, buy Broad Index Fund. VOO tracks S&P 500 with 0.03% expense ratio. VTI tracks entire US stock market. Also 0.03. The S&P 500 has returned about 10% per year on average for past century. Over any 20-year period, it never produced negative real return. And before you ask, no, you do not need to research individual stocks. You're not going to find next Apple by reading quarterly reports at midnight. You know who finds next Apple? People who work at Apple competitors and have inside information, which is also illegal. Everyone else is just guessing and pretending they have system. Buy the index fund. You'll let the actual smart people at 500 companies figure out how to make money. Your job is to not interfere. You can add 20% international exposure with VXUS if you want. After you max the Roth IRA at $7,500, open taxable brokerage account with Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard, and keep investing in same index funds. Set up automatic contributions of whatever you can afford monthly. And here's something critical about index funds. You not just buying stocks, you buying system that been proven to work for decades. When you buy VOO, you betting on American economy continuing to grow. Companies go bankrupt, industries collapse. But overall, market has always recovered and reached new highs. Let Caveman show you what compounding does. If you invest $20,000 in S&P 500 index fund at 10% annually, in 10 years you have $51,875. In 20 years, $134,550. In 30 years, $348,988. You turn $20,000 into almost $350,000 by doing nothing for 3 decades. But if you invest that $20,000 and add $500 per month, after 30 years at 10%, you will have over $1.5 million. You contribute $200,000 total. Your money earns $1.3 million in gains. Your money earned 6.5 times what you put in. Let Caveman put that in perspective. At 4% safe withdrawal rate, that $1.5 million means $60,000 per year. You can pull out forever without touching the principal. That full salary from doing nothing except making one smart decision today and then repeating it monthly for 3 decades. While your friends stressing about whether they can retire, you deciding whether to retire at 55 or 50, and here cost of waiting. Invest $20,000 today for 30 years at 10%, and you get $348,988. Wait 5 years, and invest that same $20,000. After 25 years, you have $216,694. That 5-year delay cost you $132,294. That not just money. That 4 years and 4 months of your working life. Imagine telling your 60-year-old self that they have to work 4 extra years because your 25-year-old self waited 5 years to start investing. That what procrastination actually costs. Not money, time. Now Caveman knows what just happened. Caveman showed you those compound interest numbers, and your brain immediately started looking for ways to juice those returns even higher. Stop. This is where people destroy themselves. They see S&P 500 near all-time highs and think surely it has to come down soon, so they wait for crash. Hear why that terrible. Market spends most of its time at or near all-time highs because it trends upward. If you only invested when market was not at all-time highs, you would be sitting on sidelines most of the time. There's actually famous study about this. Researchers looked at worst possible market timer in history, someone who invested $2,000 per year into S&P 500, but only invested at absolute worst times, right before every major crash from 1970 to 2013. Worst market timer ever. And you know what happened? They still ended up with over $1.1 million, because even though they bought at worst possible times, they stayed invested and let time do the work. Meanwhile, person sitting on sidelines waiting for perfect moment ended up with nothing. Time in market beats timing the market every single time. Now let Caveman talk about what not to do. Do not try to time the market. JP Morgan found that if you invested $10,000 and stayed fully invested from 1993 to 2013, you would have $97,700. If you missed just the 10 best days over those 20 years, you would have $49,000. Missing 10 days out of 5,000 trading days cut returns in half. Most of best days happen right after worst days when everyone panicking. When you sit on sidelines waiting for perfect time, you miss the recovery. Do not day trade. Do not buy individual stocks unless you understand the business and plan to hold for years. 90% of day traders lose money. The average active trader underperforms the index by 6.5% per year. Do not invest in things you do not understand. If someone pitches whole life insurance as investment, run. MLE opportunity, run faster, stock tip, that random crypto coin your Uber driver told you about, ignore it. And here thing about day trading that nobody mentions. 90% of day traders lose money, which is honestly impressive when you think about it. Stock market goes up over time. Doing nothing would make you money. You have to actively try to lose money in rising market. And yet 90% of day traders find a way. They like people entering building through window while door is wide open. Technically possible, much harder. And everyone watching thinks you idiot. And the biggest one? Do not let lifestyle inflation destroy your savings. You hit 20,000 and suddenly think you deserve nicer apartment or better car. Maybe you do. But if buying it drops you back to zero, you just spent years grinding to save money that you incinerated in weeks. Credit card debt hit $1.28 trillion. The personal savings rate collapsed from 33% to 3.5%, which means average person is now saving about $250 per month. You know what that gets you? Nothing that matters. Used car in 12 months, maybe. That it. Meanwhile, $250 per month invested for 30 years at 10% becomes $566,000. So average person is choosing between used car in year or over $500,000 in 3 decades. And they choosing the car every single time. Do not be average. Hear what lifestyle inflation actually looks like in real time. You save $20,000. You feel successful. You've been driving 2014 Corolla for 6 years, and honestly, it's fine, but you tired of your co-workers making jokes about it, so you trade it in, get something respectable. Nothing crazy. Just 2023 model, $380 per month, that $4,560 per year. Over 30 years, that $380 per month invested at 10% becomes $863,000. You traded slightly nicer car for almost million in retirement wealth. And worst part, in 3 years you will be just as used to 2023 model as you were to 2014. And you will start eyeing 2027 models, wondering if maybe you deserve another upgrade. Caveman seen this pattern destroy people over and over. They hit savings goal, they celebrate by upgrading their lifestyle, and then they right back where they started. Except now they have higher fixed costs that harder to cut. That nicer apartment costs $400 more per month. That $4,800 year you now committed to spending. If you invested that $400 monthly instead at 10% returns, after 30 years you would have over $900,000. You traded slightly nicer place to live for almost million in retirement wealth. Was it worth it? You know what wild? Lot of people will save $20,000 over 3 years and then spend $4,000 on vacation because, quote, I deserve it and you cannot take it with you. Both of which are true, but neither of which explain why you just lit 20% of your net worth on fire to take pictures in front of buildings you do not care about, so people you do not like can see them on Instagram. That not treating yourself, that paying $4,000 for temporary dopamine and permanent regret. Here another option. Done treasury bills. You can buy them at treasurydirect.gov or through your brokerage. They backed by US government, making them one of safest investments on earth. Unlike savings account, the rate is locked in for term you choose, and in many places, the interest is exempt from state and local taxes. It perfect place for cash you might need in next 1 to 2 years. You could also consider real estate. With $20,000, you got enough for FHA down payment. 3.5% down on $200,000 property is $7,000 plus closing costs, bringing you to $15,000 to $20,000. If you house hack by buying duplex, live in one unit and rent out the other, the tenant pays your mortgage while you build equity. It more hands-on than index funds, but the leverage and rental income can be powerful. And sometimes best investment is in yourself. If certification could increase your income by $10,000 to $30,000 per year, spending $500 to $2,000 on it might beat any stock market return. Google Cloud certification costs roughly $200 and can open doors to 6-figure jobs. AWS certification costs $300. And average salaries often exceed $130,000. These not expenses. These investments with massive returns. Just make sure you're investing in skills with real market demand. Strategy depends on age. In your 20s, be aggressive. You got decades to recover from crashes. Go 90% stocks, 10% bonds. Max the Roth IRA every year. Keep your emergency fund lean. Maybe 3 months since you probably do not have mortgage or kids yet. Time is your weapon. Like 25-year-old who invests $20,000 once will have roughly $350,000 by age 55, assuming 10% returns. If you in your 20s, your biggest advantage is not your income or your savings rate, it that you can watch your portfolio drop 40% in crash and shrug because you do not need that money for 40 years. Your 55-year-old co-worker cannot do that. They checking their 401k every day during downturn, panicking about whether they can still retire. You should be hoping for crash so you can buy stocks on sale. That superpower of being young, and most people waste it by being too conservative. In your 30s, you got more income but more obligations. Bump your emergency fund to 6 months. Still prioritize Roth IRA and index funds, but start thinking about 529 plans if you have kids. Allocate 80% stocks and 20% bonds. In your 40s, urgency increases. You should have 5 times your income saved by 50. If you behind, this $20,000 is critical. Max out retirement accounts, consider catch-up contributions, and shift towards 60-40 stocks and bonds allocation. Reason these allocations change with age is not because stocks become riskier as you get older. It's because your time horizon shortens. 25-year-old can ride out market crash and wait for recovery. 55-year-old who needs that money in 10 years cannot afford to see their portfolio cut in half right before retirement. That's why you gradually shift toward more stable assets as you age. It's not about being conservative. It's about being realistic about how much time you have to recover from volatility. So here the framework. If you got $20,000 saved, first, pay off any debt over 7%, that guaranteed return. Second, build emergency fund of $10,000 to $15,000 in high-yield savings account, earning 4% or more. Third, max your Roth IRA at $7,500 and buy total market index fund like VTI or VOO. Fourth, put anything left into taxable brokerage in same funds or into I-bonds for safety. Then set up automatic monthly contributions and never stop. That's it. It not complicated. It does not involve researching stocks or following crypto Twitter. What works is buying boring index funds consistently, keeping costs low, avoiding stupid mistakes, and letting time do the work. Remember what Caveman said at beginning. There are only two paths from 20,000. One leads to 350,000. One leads back to zero with nicer car. Difference is not luck. It not income. It not timing. It whether you can do something boring and effective instead of something exciting and destructive. Your 20,000 is test. Can you be boring for 3 decades while everyone around you tries to be clever? Can you drive the paid-off Corolla while your co-worker finances BMW? Can you keep buying index funds when they down 30% and everyone's saying market is broken? Because that's what this actually takes. Not intelligence, not secret knowledge, just ability to follow simple plan without getting distracted by shiny objects or scared by temporary losses. People who build wealth are not smarter than you. Man, they just more boring. They do same thing every month for 30 years, while everyone else chases returns, picks stocks, tries to time markets, and switches strategies every time something does not work immediately. Be boring. Get wealthy. Everything else is noise. Open the Roth IRA, buy the index fund, set up automatic contributions, and then go live your life while compound interest does what it's been doing for centuries, quietly making patient, boring people wealthy while everyone else stays broke trying to be interesting. Caveman taught you truth today. Now you choose. Stay weak like modern human who spends 20,000 on depreciating car, or get strong like Caveman who turns 20,000 into 350,000. Comment below what you doing with your money.
Subscribe to Caveman channel. Tribe grows stronger together.
A caveman sees you in next teaching.